The woman they were pushing toward the door had spent 11 nights sleeping upright in a plastic hospital chair beside their son. She had wiped his fever with her own hands. She had never asked him for a single naira. They called her a gold digger in front of 40 guests and a phone held up to record it. They had it exactly backwards. And by the time they understood how wrong they were, it would cost them everything they were so afraid of losing. This is the story of a woman the whole world misjudged, a man who almost let them, and the moment money finally told the truth about everyone in the room. Stay with this story to the end. What love looks like when the money disappears will surprise you, and the ones who called her a thief will end up begging for the very heart they tried to throw away. There is a kind of wealth in Lagos that announces itself before a man enters the room. Emeka Okonkwo had that kind. By 41, he owned one of the most respected construction firms on the mainland, the company behind three of the towers that changed the city's skyline. He did not inherit it. He had built it from a single rented pickup truck and a reputation for finishing what he started. People who had known him when he had nothing liked to say he had been carved out of discipline. He woke before the city. He shook hands like he meant them. He kept his word in a place where words were cheap. But a man can be sharp about cement and blind about people. Emeka was surrounded by people who loved his money and called it loving him. His mother, Madame Okonkwo, measured every person by their family name and their bank balance. His younger sister, Ngozi, had never worked a full year in her life and lived on the edges of his success. His closest friends, Tundi and Kalechi, drank his wine, used his contacts, and called it brotherhood. And then there was Bianca, polished, beautiful, fluent in the language of status, the daughter of a family his mother approved of loudly and often. Bianca had decided, long before Emeka had, that she would be the one to spend his fortune. None of them noticed that Emeka was deeply, quietly tired, not of work, of being valued for what he could give. It was his heart that introduced him to Amara, not in the poetic sense, in the literal one. He collapsed during a site inspection on a hot afternoon, chest tight, vision narrowing, and woke up 2 days later in a private ward with wires on his skin and a stranger checking the monitor beside his bed. The stranger was a nurse named Amara. She was 29, calm, plain-spoken, with tired eyes and gentle hands. She did not know who he was. To her, he was bed 7, a stress and heart case who needed rest and did not like being told to rest. "You are awake," she said that first morning. "Good. Now lie down before you undo the work we just did keeping you alive." "Do you know who I am?" he asked. He was used to that question opening doors. "You are a patient who almost died from pretending he was a machine," she answered, adjusting his drip. "That is all I need to know about you today." No one had spoken to him like that in 15 years. Over the next 2 weeks, Amika watched her the way careful men watch things they cannot yet explain. He saw how she treated the rich patient in the next ward, and the cleaner who mopped the floor with exactly the same patience. He saw her stay 40 minutes past her shift to calm an old woman who had no visitors. He saw her refuse a thick envelope a grateful family tried to press into her hand. Refuse it twice, gently, without making them feel small. He learned that she sent most of her salary home to a younger brother in school. He learned that she had lost her father early and had been the quiet strength of her house ever since. He learned that she did not want anything from anyone, which is the rarest thing a wealthy man ever meets. By the time he was discharged, Emeka understood something he could not say out loud yet. For the first time in his adult life, someone had been kind to him before they knew his name was worth anything. He came back to the hospital a week later, healthy, in a quiet car, and waited for her shift to end. "You are not my patient anymore," she said when she saw him. "I know," he said. "That is the point." He did not rush her. That was the second rarest thing. He sent no jewelry, made no grand show. He sent her a textbook her brother needed for school, with no message attached. He asked about her work and listened to the answers. He learned the name of the buka where she liked the rice. Week by week, a wealthy man who had forgotten how to be a person was slowly, carefully becoming one. And week by week, Amara, who had spent her life guarding her heart, opened a window in a room that had been closed a long time. She fell in love with him before she ever saw his house. That detail mattered. It would matter more than anyone knew. The trouble began the day the family found out. Madame Okonkwo heard it first from Ngozi, who had seen them together at a restaurant far below the family's usual standard. Within a day, the verdict was passed without trial. "A nurse," his mother said, the word landing like an insult. "From where? What is her father's name? She has seen your money, and now she is climbing. Emeka, open your eyes. These girls study men like you in their sleep." "She did not know who I was when she met me," Emeka said. "That is exactly what a clever one would make you believe," his mother replied. Bianca cried perfect tears and called old friends to spread a careful sadness. Tunda laughed and called Amara a hospital opportunity. Ngozi began the small, constant work of poisoning. The comments dropped at dinner, the comparisons, the reminders of family image. And the name they chose for her, the name they repeated until it stuck to the walls of that family, was the oldest weapon they had. Gold digger. Amara felt it before anyone said it to her face. She felt it in the way the mother's eyes traveled from her shoes to her hair and found her lacking. She felt it in the way conversation stopped when she entered. She was a woman who had spent her life reading the temperature of rooms. And this room was cold. She did the thing that confused them most. She did not chase their approval. She did not perform. When Emeka tried to buy her things, she refused most of them. When he offered to move her into a better flat, she said no. She would move when her own salary moved her. When his mother made a cutting remark at a family lunch, Amara did not fire back. She simply said, "Thank you for having me, Ma," and helped clear the plates like the home-trained woman she was. "Why do you let them treat you like that?" Emeka asked her once, ashamed. "Because I did not come for them," she said. "I came for you, and I am not going to become someone ugly just because they expect me to be." He should have married that answer on the spot. Instead, he let it drift, because a man surrounded by loud voices begins to mistake noise for truth. The engagement happened anyway, quietly, the two of them deciding it between themselves. And his mother refused the wedding she wanted with the family she wanted, planned one last performance. She arranged an engagement reception in Emika's own house and invited 40 of her sharpest guests. Amara, hopeful, thinking it was a gesture of peace, came in a simple dress and a borrowed confidence. Halfway through the evening, Madame Okonkwo stood, glass in hand, and turned the whole room toward the girl by the door. "Before we celebrate," she said, smiling, "let us be honest in this house. We all know what some women come looking for: money, status, a man's hard work to spend as their own." She looked directly at Amara. "You are not welcome in this family. Whatever you came here to take, you will leave with nothing. Say it with me, everyone. We know what she is." The room laughed the way cruel rooms laugh, half nervous, half thrilled. Someone lifted a phone to record it. Bianca, seated in the front, smiled into her drink. Amara stood at the door and did not cry. That was the thing several guests would remember later and not understand. She did not cry. She set down the small plate in her hand. She looked at Emika once, waiting to see if the man she loved would stand up in his own house. He hesitated. 1 second, 2, the second of a lifetime. It was enough. Amara picked up her bag, said, "Thank you for the food, Ma," in a voice steadier than anyone deserved, and walked out of the gate into the dark. She did not slam it. She closed it softly, the way you close a door on something you have finished with. She broke the engagement the next morning by phone, before he could find the words to apologize. "I am not angry, Emeka," she told him, and the calm in her voice was worse than shouting. "I just cannot marry a man who needs to be sure I am not a thief before he will stand beside me. Be well. I mean that." She blocked the noise. She went back to her shifts. She did not appear in the videos his sister's friends were already sharing. While Lagos passed her name around like a snack, Amara was at a bedside in a green ward, holding the hand of an old man who had no one. What nobody in that house knew was that they had just thrown away the only person in Emeka's life who would still be standing when the money was gone. And the money was already leaving. It had simply not told him yet. The collapse did not come from a stranger. It came from a brother. Tunde, the friend who laughed loudest, the friend who had named Amara an opportunity, had spent 2 years quietly building a parallel structure inside one of Emeka's biggest contracts. Inflated supplier invoices, a shell company in a cousin's name, funds redirected in small, careful amounts that a busy man signing fast did not catch. Tunde had counted on one thing, that Emeka trusted him too much to look underneath. When a government audit froze the contract, the floor opened. Suppliers Emeka had never truly owed came forward with documents. Banks that had smiled at him now spoke in lawyers. The towers that carried his name became the weight that pulled him under. In 90 days, the man who built the skyline was selling the cars in his own compound to pay the staff he could not bear to abandon. And then his body, already warned once, broke under the stress. A stroke, severe, in the middle of a meeting where he was begging for time. He went down on the marble floor of his own boardroom while Tunde watched, and Tunde did not even kneel beside him. Emeka survived, but the man who left the hospital this time could not walk without help. His right side dragged. His speech came slow and slurred on bad days. The hands that had shaken 1,000 deals could not hold a cup without shaking. He came home to a house with the lights cut for unpaid bills, to a company in administration, to a name that men now lowered their voices to say. And one by one, the gold diggers showed their faces, the real ones, the ones no one had ever thought to accuse. Bianca was first, the wedding watcher, the front row smiler, the daughter of the good family. She did not visit once. When a mutual friend asked her, she said, "I cannot be tied to a man with no future. I have my image to think about." The woman his mother had fought for vanished the moment there was nothing left to spend. Tundi and Kelechi were next. The brothers, the wine drinkers, they became unreachable. Their phones rang into silence. Kelechi was overheard at a club saying Emeka had carried his own bad luck. These were the men who had eaten at his table for 15 years. Ngozi, his sister, who had lived on his generosity her whole life, came once, took what small valuables were left for safekeeping, and did not come again. She had places to be. None of them were beside her brother. Even Madame Okonkwo, who loved her son in her own controlling way, was broken by it. She did not abandon him, but she could not help him. She sat in the dim house, wringing her hands, calling the same useless relatives, learning for the first time in her life that the family names she worshipped were just names, and names do not pay for medicine. The house went quiet, the kind of quiet that is not peace, the kind that is the sound of everyone who only loved the money walking out the same door. It was into that quiet that a small car pulled up one evening, 3 weeks after the stroke. A nurse stepped out in her uniform, still tired from a double shift, carrying a bag of groceries she had paid for with her own salary. Amara had heard. Of course, she had heard. Hospitals talk. She had heard everything, and she had come. Madame Okonkwo opened the door and froze. Standing on the step was the girl she had humiliated in front of 40 people. The girl she had named a thief. The girl who, by every law of pride, should have laughed in her face. "I heard he is not eating," Amara said simply. "I came to help." The old woman's mouth opened and nothing came out. Then, slowly, the woman who had stood and called this girl a gold digger lowered her head and began to weep because she finally understood, standing in her own doorway, exactly who the thief in the family had never been. Amara did not gloat. She did not make a speech. She stepped past the stunned mother, set down her groceries, washed her hands, and went to find the man she had walked away from. She knelt beside his chair. Emeka turned his head with effort, and when he saw her face, he made a sound that was half her name and half a sob, the broken sound of a proud man with nothing left to offer, and the one person who had never wanted his offerings sitting in front of him. "You should not be here," he managed. "I have nothing. They were right about everyone but you. Go. You will only lose with me." Amara took his shaking hand and held it still inside both of hers, the way she had held it the very first morning in that ward when he was only bed 7. "I did not love your money, Emeka," she said quietly, "so losing it does not change how I feel. I told you once I came for you. I meant it then. I mean it now." And she stayed. She did not stay for a week of pity and then leave. She moved her brother's school to a cheaper one without complaint. gave up the small comforts she had earned, and poured herself into a house that had thrown her out. She nursed him with a skill the family could not have bought, the slow daily work of recovery that no amount of money speeds up. She bathed him when he could not, and she did it without ever once letting him feel less than a man. She fed him. She walked him, step by dragging step, up and down the corridor 100 times a day. She paid for the medicines the family could not, never once mentioning the cost. The mother watched all of it. The mother who had judged a woman by her shoes watched that woman kneel on the floor every morning to help her son's foot find the ground. And the things Madame Okonkwo had believed her whole life came apart quietly inside her. But Amara did more than nurse him, because Amara, the woman they had called simple, the woman they had reduced to a uniform, had been paying attention her entire life. She had grown up watching how the strong took from the weak. She did not believe in luck, good or bad. She believed in evidence. While Emeka was still learning to hold a spoon again, Amara was learning his ruin. She read every document the administrators left behind. She did not understand construction, but she understood patterns the way a nurse understands a chart, and the chart of Emeka's collapse had a hand in it. The same supplier, again and again. The same cousin's name, numbers that did not breathe like honest numbers. She was careful. She was patient. She took the papers to a financial journalist who had once been a patient on her ward, a man who remembered the nurse who had sat with him through a frightening night and never forgot a kindness. She found a regulatory contact through the brother of a colleague. She did not shout. She did the quiet thing, the thing the loud people never expect from the people they look down on. She built a file. What the file showed, when the right eyes finally read it, was that Emeka Okonkwo had not been a careless man who lost a fortune. He was a robbed man, and the robber had a face, a signature, and a shell company registered in his own cousin's name. The story did not come from Amara's mouth. It came from the right desk, with enough proof attached that no honest official could look away. The frozen contract was reopened to investigation. The fraud, once invisible, became undeniable. The court did what Amara had quietly made it impossible not to do. It moved to recover what had been stolen and to return what could be returned. Tunde's world ended the way he had built it, in the dark, with no one beside him. His family turned from him before the law even arrived, because a thief in the open is worse than poverty to people who care about names. Kelechi, exposed beside him, lost the contacts he had only ever borrowed. The men who had called Emeka's ruin his own bad luck learned that luck had never been the author of anything. It did not happen overnight. Recovery never does. But over the following year, with a portion of his assets restored and his health returning step by stubborn step, Emeka Okonkwo began, smaller and humbler, to rebuild. Not the empire, something better than the empire. A life with the right person standing inside it. And the people who had left when the money left came knocking again, the way they always do, when the lights came back on. Bianca was the first to try. She called, sweet as ever, mentioning old times, mentioning how unfairly she had been advised, how she had always believed in him. Emeka listened, and when she finished, he said only, "You believed in my account, Bianca, not in me. There is a woman in this house who knows the difference. Take care of yourself." He did not raise his voice. He simply set the phone down, the way Amara had once softly closed a gate. Tunda wrote letters from the trouble he was in. Ngozi appeared with apologies as thin as the help she had once given. Emeka was not cruel to any of them, but he was finally completely clear. He had spent 15 years confusing the people who took for the people who loved. He would not make that mistake for one more day. The hardest reckoning belonged to his mother. Madame Okonkwo came to the small sitting room one evening where Amara sat folding hospital scrubs, and she did something the proud old woman had never done in her life. She lowered herself slowly and took the younger woman's hands. "I called you a thief in front of 40 people," she said, her voice breaking. "I told you to leave with nothing. And when my son had nothing, you are the only one who came back carrying something. I was the foolish one. I judged the outside of you, and I was wrong about the whole of you. I am asking you to forgive an old woman who only learned too late what she was looking at." Amara was quiet for a long moment. There was no triumph in her face. There never had been. "I forgave you the day I came back, Ma," she said gently. "I did not come here to win anything from you. I came because he needed me. That is all I have ever come for." And the mother wept again, but this time the tears were clean. Emeka married Amara in a small ceremony with no 40 guests and no cameras held up to capture cruelty. He could walk down the short aisle now, slowly, with a cane, and with her hand under his arm. There was no performance. There was only a man who had been stripped down to the truth, standing beside the one person who had loved that truth when it had nothing in its pockets. He said his vow plainly. The way she had taught him, plainness mattered. "Everyone in my life valued what I could give. You valued me when I could give nothing. I spent years being rich and lonely. I would rather spend the rest of my life poor and known by you. But God has been kind, and I get to have both." She said yes the way she did everything, quietly, completely, without needing the room to see it. They built a life that the loud people would never fully understand. He returned to business, smaller, cleaner, and he never again confused a smile for loyalty. She kept nursing because she had never worked for the money and was not about to start. They were not the richest people in any room they entered, but they were, finally, the two people in the room who knew exactly what the other one was worth. And the name the family had tried to hang on Amara, the name they had laughed as they threw at her, never stuck. Because a name only sticks to the person it is true about. The gold diggers had all been seated in the front row that night, applauding. The only one who had ever truly loved him had been standing alone at the door, holding a plate, refusing to cry. Money does not love you. It only reveals who does. When everything is full, you cannot tell the difference between a person who loves you and a person who loves your hands when they are full. It is only when the hands are empty that love finally tells the truth. The ones who run when you fall were never yours, and the one who kneels beside you in the dark, asking for nothing, holding you steady, was the treasure you almost let pride throw away. Guard the ones who love you when you have nothing. They are worth more than every person who praises you when you have everything. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe and join our growing family of story lovers. Your support keeps these stories alive, and there is another powerful story waiting for you on your screen right now. Go ahead and watch it. I promise it is worth your time.